Homelessness 2.0, day 79. Woke up at like 7:30 for whatever fucking reason. Only to try to go back to bed and not really succeed. Ugh. This cough won't go away. Doesn't seem to matter how long. Just wants to persist. If I could, and I can't, but if I could, I would leave the U.S. and I would never come back. Just how it is for me. I'm sure that most of my personal issues that I have that cause me to hate life, to want to kill myself, to just feel hopeless about everything, is largely due to the way this country behaves with regards to pretty much everything. You know, like, I haven't been looking for a job. What job is going to pay me well? Nothing. Nothing that I know of is going to pay me well enough. I don't have, a college degree in anything. I've tried going to college multiple fucking times. I was fucking going to college and I was trying to finish up shit. But with the living situation having been unstable, I had to cut classes down from 2 to 1. So that was going to take even longer to get shit done. And then the whole COVID situation happens. Because, I was taking a history class, right? And so it was before COVID, and it was before the housing situation. Because it was like, okay, either I just go to work and I don't go to school, or I go to work but I go to school for one class, and that's about it. Because I was trying to finish my AA, which I have not completed. And in attempting to do that, all sorts of stupid shit was happening. So, middle of June 2019, well, actually, about the time that I was discovered, soon after I find out that I'm gonna have to move out because they're renovating the whole place and they're kicking everybody out. So I got that going for me, which sucks. So I'm not exactly thrilled to have to move out, because the whole thing was, hey, I'm living at this sober living, and the whole point is, so that you can take your time, get back on your feet, and be able to successfully move on in life. That's the idea of a sober living. And at least the prices were reasonable there too. They weren't terrible. I was paying what? $400 a month for a room? Not bad at all. My own room. So they're kicking everybody out. And in the meantime, you know, I'm struggling to want to maintain working where I'm at. They've just changed everything, restructured, as they called it, which meant they fired a bunch of people and then they shifted a lot of the workload. Went from being kind of a fun job at times to mostly sucking. So I'm not putting in the effort. I'm not liking or wanting to do what's necessary. Man, I don't want to stand in a damn booth by myself and talk to non-existent people and try to make it sound like things are fun and happy and exciting. I'm not that good of an actor. And I'm not good at improv, which is a huge part of it. So that little situation being what it was, and having no hope of the future in that regard, and realizing that, well, I don't know what the fuck's happening to me then. Well, I got a specific time frame where I've got to get out. Well, then they wanted to train me for temporary placement. Well, they were training me, in fact, so that I could take over as somebody's board op, or as a board op for one of the morning shows, because their board operator was going to go out of town or something for like a week, whatever. And so I got trained on it and everything, but then the housing situation became what it was. And so I ended up having to drop a class as it was. And then I had to drop that as well because I couldn't promise them that I was going to be there. There's no way. I had no clue as to what my housing situation was going to be. And when the time did come, I didn't have a stable housing situation. I had a place, but it wasn't somewhere I wanted to be. And so I was down to only one class because I had to drop a class because of it, because of timing and everything else. And I was still going to work at, work at midnight. But here's the thing. This is something I was thinking of during my stupor after I woke up at 7:30 this morning. Is that the amount of time that my commute was and the amount of time that I spent at work while not getting paid was more than the amount of time that I spent working at work. Like, my commute on average was about an hour and a half each way. That's 3 hours. All right? And then, on top of it, because of the nature of the bus system out here in Los Angeles, a lot of routes just shut off, especially bus routes, after like 9 o'clock, including ones that went right down, like literally blocks away from where I was working. So if I didn't get there if I didn't leave by like 8 p.m., if I didn't leave where I was living at by 8 p.m., I couldn't actually get to work at a reasonable time, and would often have, and often be in a position where I was either going to be late or I'd have to take an Uber to go the rest of the way. So like, what's the point in spending $15, $20, $25 to go a mile? That's a waste of money. That's fiscally irresponsible. Especially when you're only pulling in like $70 for 5 hours of work, which is approximately how much money I was making. I worked 5 hours, make $70 just to. Oh, and so I would get to work a lot earlier than I needed to. I would usually get there around 9 or 10 o'clock. Usually closer to like 9:30, 9 or 9:30. So I was at work anywhere between 3 and 4 hours sometimes, because sometimes I get there even earlier, depending on when I left the house and whether the buses, all arrived at good times and stuff. So anywhere between 3 and 4 hours, I was already at work. And then often I would have to stay at work for another half hour, an hour after the job, or I would literally have to try to run out of the building to catch the next bus, because it was literally going to be there in mere minutes. So to keep myself sane, I never ran after the bus unless everything was just perfectly aligned. And typically I would have to wait until, because I get off at 5 a.m. So I typically have to wait until like 6 a.m. or roughly, like 5:50 or something like that, before I could leave, because even though the bus wasn't too far away, it was in the middle of this big commercial complex. And so I'd have to make my way to the elevator, take the elevator down, make my way out of the building, make my way out of the complex, get onto the street, walk to wherever the nearest bus stop was, wait for whatever lights and all that stuff. It was roughly a 10-minute, I'd say on average about a 10-minute ordeal from the time that I left to the time that I was able to get to the bus stop. At least 10 minutes. Darker than I wanted it to be, but it won't. And then, of course, morning bus situation was who the fuck knows. Because I could get on the bus, get to the train station, get on the train, take it to one of the main stops that I needed, and then sometimes the bus would be arriving soon, or sometimes the bus would have just left, depending on who knows what random ass factors. And because of that, sometimes I have to wait anywhere between a couple of minutes to nearly half an hour. And, LA does get cold. I mean, there were times where it was in the low 40s, upper 30s. And I mean, sure, yeah, it's not fucking 5 degrees or whatever, but it's still fucking cold. Especially when you're sitting there for 30 minutes waiting for a fucking bus. So I'd usually get home around 7:30 or so. So I would leave to go to work around 7:30 p.m. and I would get back 12 hours later and I'd only work for 5. What's the point in that? Why does anybody need to work like that? Oh, sure. Usually I didn't have to work the next day. Sometimes I had to work 2 days in a row. Here's the fun part about that, though. Usually when I had to work 2 days in a row, I worked an evening shift. So if I worked on the weekdays, I worked from midnight to 5. If I worked on the weekends, I worked any potential shift. Again, only 5 hours. And usually, I work the sort of beginning of the third shift, if you will. So work the late evening shift. Typically, I would work from 7 to midnight. Problem is, most of the buses ain't running at that time. And even if they are, they're on a 1-hour schedule. So if I got off at 12 and let's say the next bus was possibly at 12:20, I might get that bus if I was lucky. Because often the bus tracking systems that were available, either through the Metro app itself or various other apps or online utilities, while they may have the schedule, they may not necessarily be right. I remember going out there and waiting beyond when it was supposed to have arrived. I waited for almost an hour one day, and it came at a time that it wasn't even supposed to. I'm freaking my ass off this whole time. And it's like, by the way, this is me working at one of, if not the biggest radio conglomerate in America, iHeartRadio. It used to be Clear Channel, and then they split off from Clear Channel because Clear Channel started focusing on whatever the fuck they were doing, probably also because of antitrust laws, I'm sure. But I was working for iHeart, and I could barely afford to travel to work. Because when you're making $70 a day and you're only working a maximum, on average, 4 days a week, and that was max. Usually I had 3. But it would actually fluctuate typically between 3 and 4. When I started there, I was usually working 5 days a week. And remember, I was only working 5 days a week for 5 hours a day. And that was pretty typical. But then after the restructuring, they pretty much cut me one day off. And so I wasn't working nearly as much anymore. One of the things I really liked doing when I first started there was when I was working at KISS in the middle of the day on the weekend. I liked doing that. So, one of the things that I would do also, like I said, with the overnight thing, I'd be scheduled to work until midnight. But then I'd be scheduled to work at 7 a.m. the next day until noon. Well, I just told you that if I left to go to work at 7 p.m., I usually got home around 7 a.m. That was because I worked a midnight shift 5. Well, that means that it's about an hour and a half, sometimes 2 or longer, to commute or to wait to then commute. Well, if I have a 7-hour window between my shifts and roughly anywhere between 4 and 6 of that is a commute or waiting to commute plus commute, what are my options? Not good, really. And sometimes I'd also get off at 7 p.m. But getting off at 7 p.m., and again, when you get off at 7 p.m. and normally you're waking up around 5 or maybe earlier depending on the class that you're taking that day. This was also another thing. I was taking classes. And I was taking an afternoon history class. Well, when it throws off your sleep schedule like that, the last thing you're going to do is probably going to go home and sleep anyway. And if you do, you might not wake up in time to go to work. So I just stayed at work and slept there on the floor because I didn't have an otherwise better choice. Like, if I had a car and I didn't live too far away, I mean, granted, driving at the times that I was on and off typically wouldn't have been problematic because, like, when I would be getting, if I'd had a car and I was going to work at midnight, I could just leave at like 11 and be able to get to work in half an hour, no problem. Because the traffic isn't that bad at that time of day. And the same thing goes when getting off of work at 5. The traffic's not really all that bad. It starts picking up a lot at 6 though. So, because we have a shitty public transit system in this city, and across most of America, that is unreliable, takes forever. Like, if the bus came every 10 minutes, let's say, right? But it was intentionally one of the bigger buses that always had lots and lots of room, it would be a lot easier to deal with the bus because then you wouldn't have to worry about whether or not you're going to have a seat or something like that. And so the sitting situation would be problematic, and I got a bum ass knee and stupid ass feet that decided to start having fucking bunions when I was 29. I wasn't able to really take care of what I wanted to take care of or what I felt like I needed to take care of. And so it just caused more and more problems. So dealing with the bus situation, not going home, sleep deprived, not making that much money. I mean, like, I was saving as much money as I possibly could. There's a Food for Less that was like a mile away from where I was living. So did what I could to not blow a lot of money on stuff. And then, of course I had a little bit of money saved up here and there, and I thought I was saving up money, and I was saving up a decent chunk until, the end of 2019 when I had to go live at that stupid overpriced ass fucking sober living when you're paying $650 for a fucking bed. No, that's ridiculous. Because I was living in a room with two other dudes, one of whom, and I was sleeping during the middle of the fucking day where one of the dudes wouldn't fucking leave the room to get off his fucking phone. It's like, what's the fucking point of all this shit? And the whole point of me even talking about it in the first place was like, all of these things were getting in the way of me being able to just finish my AA. I don't even know how many classes I have. It's been almost 2 fucking years. I have no prospects for the future. I have no sense that I'm going to be able to continue going to college. So I'm not even putting that on the fucking table right now. It's gone. It's off the table. I don't even know what's on the table at this point. I haven't even rebooked my driving lesson or my driving test, which I've already paid for, so it doesn't fucking matter. This is how my life has been throughout all of my life. Constant fucking setbacks, things that I can't control. And I mean, I get it, that's life. But at the same time, they're big setbacks. They're not, inconveniences. They're life-changing problems. They are life-pausing problems. They are things that stop me from progressing forward in life. Welcome to fucking America. Have fun.